welcome to another video. It has been a while. I have my notes over here because there's some stuff I want to say. So I'm going to look at you, and I'm going to look at the notes, and I'm going to look back at you, hopefully. So this has obviously been my first video for quite a while, and there's actually a reason for that, other than the fact that DEF CON was coming up, and there was DEF CON prep, and then DEF CON happened, and all that stuff. And the main reason for that is actually, to be quite honest, imposter syndrome and really lack of motivation kind of coming from imposter syndrome. Not really burnout, more imposter syndrome. So I actually did some deep diving into it myself and have worked on coming out of it myself. And I thought it would be a good video back to make a video about it as we start getting back into videos after DEF CON. I want to talk about some of the stuff I found and some of the ways I've approached it that have really helped me get back into the swing of things and stuff like that. The times when I have it, because I do get it really bad. And I think a lot of other people in the industry, whether it's cyber in corporate or whether it's bug bounty or whether it's fitness or whether it's really any other industry, imposter syndrome is a real thing. So again, I have my notes over here so I don't miss stuff. This is all my experience. I'm going to keep the video short. A lot of you may disagree or have other opinions or whatever. Feel free to leave them in the comments, Twitter, etc., DM me, whatever. I'd love to talk about it. It's something that I feel pretty strongly about, and I know it's a pretty rampant thing, especially in our industry, like I said. So we're going to get started. So I'm going to talk about imposter syndrome first, and then kind of, again, it's not totally motivation, but it's kind of motivation based. And this is what's worked for me. So imposter syndrome has always been a real thing for me, and especially coming in as like a content creator, and should I be making content, and should I be the one making content, and bug bounty and all that kind of stuff. So also, I have seen and talked to a ton of people in our industry of cybersecurity that have also experienced imposter syndrome in one way or another, and in one level of really extreme or really low amounts. And the one thing I've heard, not just in cybersecurity, but in general with people who have dealt with imposter syndrome, is the cookie jar method, which is basically when you feel like you don't deserve something or you feel like you don't belong somewhere, to go back into your cookie jar of achievements and say, well, I didn't think I could do this either, and I was able to do it, or, you know, I didn't think I could get this cert, and then I did, or I didn't think I could even break into this industry, and here I am, or whatever it may be, right? So whatever your proverbial cookie jar of things is, I have done that. It works sometimes, it doesn't work other times for me personally, but it is something that a lot of people do, so I thought I would throw it in there. The one thing that I think has helped me the most is I've read some stuff and I've listened to some stuff, and I've kind of come to the decision, as have other people, that imposter syndrome and being uncomfortable is actually necessary. And it's part of the like leveling up and or growth process. So it probably shouldn't be every day. It probably shouldn't be every second of every day, but at some point there should be steps in my and yours growth and development where you go through a more intense version of imposter syndrome as you level up. That, do I belong here? That, should I be doing this? Am I the person for this? Because then you get to prove to yourself that actually, yes, you are. That's kind of what actually gives the most happiness at the end of the day. While you're in it, it doesn't feel good. But at the end of the day, when you do prove that, yes, you are the person to do that, yes, you can do those things, or yes, you belong there, it actually makes it feel better. And I've had some people that I actually respect quite a bit tell me that they actually think that my biggest stages of growth and their biggest stages of growth happened during those stages of being really uncomfortable with themselves or imposter syndrome. Basically the same thing. And that is actually very true of me. And let me see here. Okay, I think I've covered everything. But what I'm trying to say with the imposter syndrome thing is I'm trying to embrace imposter syndrome, and really, especially this most recent bout with it that I've had, I think it's been really nice to realize that, like, A, it's something that's going to happen, and it's something that kind of does have a spot in our life, even though it's uncomfortable, and B, that knowing that actually walking through it, taking the action to prove it wrong or prove yourself right or grow or whatever through it, and knowing that the obstacle or the unknown thing that you're afraid of or that you don't think you belong in is actually the way out of the imposter syndrome, or actually the way to the thing you want, or the way to growth, or everything like that, those like seemingly impossible things or obstacles of any kind are actually normally the way you want to go most of the time, in my experience. So going the way of the obstacles and just doing it, or tackling it, or doing the research, or trying to do the hard thing, has actually what has led to a lot of the bigger things that have happened to me and a lot of the things that I'm the most proud of. So, also, as a side note with imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome can stem from a very bad thing, in my opinion, and that's envy or jealousy. So, the last thing on imposter syndrome I want to say that I try and remember all the time, because especially in the bug bounty or cyber community, you can go on Twitter, you can go on LinkedIn, you can see these people who are killing it, you can see these people making a bunch of money, having a bunch of success, finding a bunch of bugs or new exploits, CVEs, whatever it may be, depending on your area of cyber. It could be fitness. You can go on Instagram right now and see 80,000 people with a six-pack or in shape or running marathons or whatever it may be. And the one thing that I like to always remember, and a quote that I always liked, is that your quality of life is equal to how happy you are minus envy/jealousy, right? So you can be very happy, but if you're also very envious, your actual quality of life is still suffering, even though you're extremely happy, because the envy is subtracted, right? So it's an equation that I personally like using. Again, you may think it's ridiculous. Other people may think it's ridiculous. I'd love to hear your equation. But my equation that has kept me kind of centered is that the quality of your life equals how happy you are minus envy. So then going into motivation is a big thing for a lot of people. I really like, especially during bouts of imposter syndrome or stuff like that, or being in burnout, whatever it may be, I always like, you hear people say it's the journey, not the destination. And truthfully, I hate that, because I actually heard it said better, which was it's not the pursuit of happiness, but it's the happiness of the pursuit, right? So it's not even the journey to the destination. It's who you become on the journey that makes you so happy. And one of the reasons that I think that is because people have their own identity of themselves, right? Whether you see yourself as an athlete or a hacker or a nerd or an IT guy or someone who can do a certain thing or a good chef or this or that, right? Going on the journey doesn't necessarily fulfill that identity. You're chasing that identity and you're doing something that a person with that identity would do. So you feel good about doing it, yes. But what really feels good is that you become that identity that you have internally for yourself, right? So if I want to identify and I feel like I'm a bug bounty hunter, but I don't ever bug bounty hunt, it's really hard to convince yourself that that's actually what you're doing, right? Just because I put in my Twitter bio that I'm a hacker, but I never hack anything. Your mind will start to tell you that. You start to catch on your own bullshit, basically, right? So I always like focusing on the happiness of the pursuit and becoming who you are on the journey. So I covered that. The other thing is I mentioned, especially it's a really good example with the fitness thing, right? And bug bounty and cybersecurity has a lot of good metaphors there too. But I don't personally believe, for fitness, for example, I don't personally believe that self-esteem comes from having the six-pack. The self-esteem comes from being the type of person that goes to the gym every day. Because you know you're that type of person. You know that six-pack is there for a reason. You know why it's there, and you're comfortable in your own skin. There's a lot of people who are very in shape and not comfortable in their own skin. There's plenty of people that have done great things intellectually that aren't comfortable in their own skin, and that's one of the reasons why. Because you feel the most comfortable and the most happy when you're doing the thing that fits your identity, and you're turning into the person that you see yourself as internally, mentally, whatever that may be. Right? So it could be the same thing where if you're a smoker and you're trying to quit smoking, you hear a lot of people say you don't want to be the type of person that says, well, I haven't smoked in 5 days, because at that point you're just basically counting the amount of days until you give in. Instead, you want to be telling people, I'm not a smoker anymore, right? And what you're basically telling people is your identity doesn't involve being a smoker anymore. And that works the other way too with motivation. If you tell someone, I'm an athlete, then an athlete does things a certain way. They live life a certain way. If you're a hacker or a bug bounty hunter, or you are a cloud security person, you act and do things a certain way to achieve certain results. And when you actually follow through and do those things, this self-esteem comes from the person you're becoming doing the things, because it now matches your mental identity. So if your motivation is down or imposter syndrome or anything like that, going back to the basics, and again, going towards the obstacles and just taking small actions, even though those are the actions you probably want to take the least in the moment, That's where discipline comes in, and that's a whole different conversation. But having the discipline to take the small actions towards the person you're trying to be in your head actually is what pulls you out of the imposter syndrome. Now, again, burnout is a real thing and a necessary thing, and sometimes that does involve obviously taking a break from whatever it is and all that kind of stuff, even if it's the person who you like are, right? I'm talking about imposter syndrome and motivation, right? So if you need to take a break because you've been doing it for 24 hours a day every day, then you need to take a break. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about getting going and staying going when you need to, right? The other thing I want to mention is two things. The first thing is getting going and staying going is hard. And it's hard for me and it's hard for everybody else. There's a few people who are just naturally good at it, of course, but for most people it's hard. So again, with the little quotes, we already did the quality of life, equation. But the other thing that I really like is I've heard a ton of people say is, what should you do today to help you tomorrow? Right? So again, with the fitness thing, if you're trying to lose weight, then eating like crap today actually hurts you tomorrow, right? So in the moment, eating like crap tastes good, feels good, all that stuff, right? But eating healthy is actually helping you tomorrow. So when I'm sitting there and I'm wallowing in my own crap and whatever and imposter syndrome and I don't want to do anything and whatever, I like to write down stuff that I want to complete, and I like to break them down into as small actions as possible and just start knocking off actions that I know will help me tomorrow, whether it's tomorrow or a week or a month or whatever, right? So if I want myself in a month to look like this, those are the actions I go after. I don't always want to do them, but I've been really trying to do those, and I can actually say that when you do them, when you have the good day and you just do the actions, whether they feel good or not, at the end of the day, it actually does feel good. I swear to God. And when you get to you tomorrow, the you tomorrow actually does feel good about it too. The other thing, the last thing I'm going to say is, again, with the envy and comparison thing, it's the same thing with motivation. You may want to get to a certain point. You may want to make a whole bunch of money doing bug bounties, or you want to get in fantastic shape, or you want to go way out here and do this thing. And you see someone who does it, right? And we get back to the envy thing, but you can't expect yourself to perform at the same rate as someone else without taking the action, right? And what I mean by, and especially taking the same amount of action, and what I mean by that is not to compare yourself to people, but to actually, at least I don't mean to compare yourself to people results wise, but if I'm going to do bug bounties and I'm going to hunt bug bounties for 30 minutes and then stop, and then there's other people on Twitter that you can find all over that do bug bounties full time, so assumingly 40 hours a week, I can't get demotivated or get imposter syndrome or whatever it is because they find more than me or they have better results than I do, right? Just like I can't be upset that I can't run a marathon as fast as some people that were just in the Olympics a month ago because they run hundreds of miles more a year than I do. Literally hundreds of miles more a year than I do. So it's just not fair. So when you're setting expectations for yourself because of something you saw, even if it's not out of envy, you saw someone got to this point in so long, or someone did that, or you want to get to the same level that someone is in, even, again, not out of a place of envy, just like, man, I'd like to get to where that person is. Well, if you aren't executing at the same level as someone else, especially if where you want to get is a professional level or a full-time level or like a very intense level of doing something, you have to be willing to put in the amount of hours that that's taken care of, or other people are going to beat you because it's a competitive game. So if the reason why I say this is because if competitiveness is part of your nature, like it is for me, that helps me a lot, is getting in my own head and realizing, like, listen, if I want to compete with certain people, or I want to get to the level that someone else has attained in a non-envious way, because you can also be super happy for those people. But if I want to get to a certain level that I know is reachable, there's a certain amount of time and a certain amount of actions that need to be taken. So you might as well start now. It's the whole spiel about the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago and the second best time is right now, right? Those are some things that have worked for me. Again, you can see from the distance between videos that, again, it's just been hard to post a video. I wasn't sure what I was going to post about. I wasn't sure if I should be the one posting videos. Going into DEF CON, there were a lot of people at DEF CON that had speeches that had big names. that had a lot of success that I didn't have. So there was some imposter syndrome there and stuff like that. And it all turned out okay. We put in good work. We gave what I think was a pretty all right talk. People seemed to get some stuff out of it. And, we're coming back to YouTube now. We're going to try and keep making videos. We're going to keep doing the streams. We're going to keep bug bounty hunting. I'm going to keep doing the cyber thing. And I just wanted to share some of the stuff that I've kind of discovered in the past 2 months, 3 months, where it's kind of really been rough for me. And I've felt like I've really came out of it recently and have starting to really gain some headway here. And especially now at DEF CON, obviously I'm super hyped up because a bunch of people, you got to see a bunch of people and be really motivated and stuff like that. But I just want to share that stuff with you. Again, this is kind of a weird video. I don't expect it to get a whole bunch of views on my channel and that kind of stuff, but just want to share some stuff that I've discovered with you. Let me know if it's useful. This is stuff that has worked for me. If there's stuff that's worked for you, feel free to share it. Love to hear it. That's all I have today.